Ladies and gentlemen, over there, please welcome Martyn Stubbs. Mics.
I'm here.
Am I here? Yes, I think so. Martyn, Sheffield, South Yorkshire. You were born in South Yorkshire? Sheffield?
Sheffield.
When was that?
1950.
You old bugger.
Yes.
I thought I had a few years on you.
Well, I have to tell the truth right from the start here.
Absolutely.
So I won't.
What was it, first of all, that compelled you to ring me at home from the other side of the pond?
Well, now that you've told people that I have a health problem, I have a brain tumor, and I was going to have the thing where they put the electrodes in the suction cups. You know, it was I didn't know much about it, so I went to the store and I needed something to read, take my nerves down, and there was the unopened files, and it said mere blah 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 objects, you know. And so I bought it, and when I got home, you know, I thought, gee, I'm going to call and say and offer my footage, because the footage that you had, I had everything earlier than that. And so I didn't know. I didn't know who Graham was, and I really was trying to call Mark Birdsville, because the unopened files is
He's the editor.
He's the editor, and it's a great magazine, and poor Graham, I keep calling him Mark the whole time, but
It's better than last night. I'm going to embarrass you again. Linda, wife of Dr. Bob Wood, said, "Graham, can I take a picture of you and Bob and your son Mark?" True.
And secondly, I didn't know it was coming, so I grew a beard and cut my hair, and then I realized, oh my goodness, I've got to have something that's the same as the video, so I kept the same glasses, and sometimes I have to wear the glasses and the bifocal, so you know that'll happen.
They won't laugh. Honestly.
You can laugh. That's the thing. It's no problem.
But following that phone conversation we had very quickly, Russ Callahan travelled across from the UK,
Yes.
spent a week with you in Bowen Island,
Yeah.
and of course with Brian Borshoff as well,
Yeah,
for the Phenomena exhibition. And you must have spent every waking hour of the day and night going over that material. Was it ever your intention at that time to see it globally disseminated?
You mean when I called you? Or
When you sat down at the end of that week with Russell and Brian?
I didn't know what. No, I wasn't sure at all. I was, just showing them, and I expected them to take it back and do whatever he wanted to do.
And then, of course, on the 11th of March this year,
yes,
the balloon went up.
absolutely, and I congratulate you for that.
And not only did the balloon go up in this country, but obviously through the internet and through the magazine, for the first time, if you like, people began to register this name, Martyn Stubbs.
It scared me when I punched the Google in and put Martyn Stubbs in there.
Yeah. But what about your background, Martyn?
My background is a television producer and also a station manager. And when I started in television, I was lucky. I was the token Canadian they hired when Dick Clark Productions came up to do a chat show. And Dick Clark is the world's oldest teenager in America. And I was very lucky because he taught me more than I'd learned at school. And he asked me if I wanted to go back to Los Angeles with him, and I said no. And I wanted to do something new. So in Canada, the cable companies were being told they had to have local access television, community television, and they had to fund it to 5% of the basic revenue. And the reason is because in Canada, due to the mountains and all the distance, 98% of the country is cabled, whereas in America, they cable it just for the extra stuff. And so I started, hauling the cables and doing all the stuff, and one day I was the station manager for a bunch of them. One was a farming community, a suburb, things like that. And so, and I used to do things that had consequences to them. In other words, if an adult daycare center was threatened, I would help them by making a video, and we'd show it, and then they'd take it to the council and show it. I even had a wonderful opportunity to help close down a Dickens-like dungeon prison, where the guards union, the warden, and the prisoners association, whatever they call it, called me up and said, "Can you come film it?" And I did, and nothing seemed to happen, and I didn't know. And then they had a huge riot, called a royal commission, played my video, and shut the prison down. And so that's basically what I'm used to doing, is completing something, and I kind of I did that, from little kids shows to that.
But the UFO interest, or the interest in space, which came first?
Well,
and how?
The interest in space came first because growing up, I just loved the like everybody, the Apollo missions and all that. But what happened is somebody came along who was asked to do a UFO show, and the person, one of the things I do is I turn people down or I keep an eye and make sure that the right people that are doing it for the right reasons get access, because they're getting free television crew and everything. And he came, and I always research, so I said, well, I'll look into the subject. And he wanted to do a program on a very famous Canadian ufologist called John Magor, who published the Canadian UFO report back in I think it was the 60s. And so, to research it, I phoned MUFON and asked to get their journal. And the next thing you know, I didn't realize I joined MUFON.
This is the Mutual UFO
Network,
the
Mutual,
which is even now the biggest civilian UFO-based organization in North America.
Yeah, but it went even further. The next thing you know, they've appointed me associate, or provincial director, which is like state director or county director, whatever that means. And everybody was supposed to send the reports to me, and then I was supposed to go over them and send them in. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll do that.
And how long ago was that?
That was 1989 or
1989. But what was it that first triggered your interest, that compelled you to use your facilities at the station, if you like, to look at some of these images?
Well, there is also, I am interested in the space phenomena, in the sense of, many people here may not know it, but above thunderstorms, that NASA has acknowledged that there's elves, they call them elves and sprites and things, and they shoot 60 miles in the air, and they appear like in 1/30th of a second. And NASA acknowledges that they exist simply because it's their own satellites that pick this up. But they do say, we don't know what it is. And then the other incident was Lou Frank, Dr. Lou Frank, who's a very learned man at NASA, had his own satellite, and he picked up what he called house-sized water comets hitting the Earth all the time. And NASA backed that visually. They said, yes, well, it was our satellite, and we do have black holes, and so they said, the video's good, but we think Lou Frank's theory is a little crazy, like of house-sized water comets or something hitting. But what struck me was that being with MUFON, that so much of what came to me disappeared. And it was always said, well, the guy who shot that beautiful crystal clear thing is crazy, or, you know, there was always some excuse. And so I thought, well, if I use I should look at the NASA channel and see if it's really there, you know, if there's something there.
When you say the NASA channel, for the benefit of people who aren't familiar with that, what does that mean exactly in terms of what you were doing at that time, the NASA channel through the cable TV station?
Well, the NASA, I found out that NASA had, I didn't know it. It was broadcasting all of this stuff to the Earth during the shuttle missions. And so based on the fact that I just thought, well, maybe I'll check it out and see if there's, you know, if instead of looking up, I was going to look down. And so I happened to have the authority of the station, and I was given my own dish, and wire came down. And I had a bank of videotape recorders that well, part of my job is you're constantly monitoring things and shows and watching them. And I had all this pile of tapes. In television, they're very strict. They say, okay, after this tape's run 6 times, you have to throw it away. Well, this stuff was perfectly all right, so I was piling it up in my office. So then, of course, I got excited because I love space. The greatest space mission was to go up there and fix that telescope, and Story Musgrove was on it, and the world was cynical. And so I thought, even if I don't see anything, it should be just great to see. And so I just programmed the video machines for I think we went for 11, 14 days or something. Mm. And I'd go home and put it on. And the first time the picture came up, there were these spheres. You know, so it motivated me to keep, drove my wife crazy, you know. And the way I did it was by going at 25 speed, or, you know, in other words, you fast forward it because most of the shots are very still. So it's like just watching a chair. And if anything comes into the picture, there's movement. So, you know, that's pretty much how but I knew nothing really about the whole thing. So I mean,
when you say you're speeding things on, you are a trained editor.
A trained editor, but not a trained space expert or a physicist or something. So,
but to be a trained editor, you have to have a trained eye to pick these things out.
Yes, exactly. And the first thing, but I didn't. No, absolutely, I'm wrong. Actually, the spheres, you have to have a trained eye to see them all. But they were so obvious, you know. Because something comes up, moves over, and so I called that space phenomena. Then I started calling it space phenomena 1, because one day as a trained editor, I kept seeing these flashes, and you know, vacuum of space flashes, you know. So I went frame to frame, you know, on what home video. There's 30 frames per second, and I still had flashes. Like, in other words, everything would be still, and when you went to the next frame, it would jump. So I had to think. So I thought, well, how am I going to do this? So what I did is, I know that there's actually 60 frames per second. They're called field frames. They're scan frames, and to get a good picture, it's literally scans twice. And for the most home videos, what would you possibly want to look at 60 frames? So if you look at them, and then I took an SVHS machine and time-coded it, which means put numbers on it, and delivered up 60 frames, and all these things appeared. All this thing I call phenomena 2. Colors, it was just spectacular. And of course I was quite shaken, really, because I'd never seen that before. I'd only seen the STS-48, and I hadn't even really followed that up, you know. I just sort of...
STS-48, for the benefit of, again, people here, 15th of September 1991, when an object appeared on the Earth's horizon. There was a flash to the left of the shuttle camera, a streak, another streak, and this object did a right angle turn. that must have interested you then.
It did, but you know, they just quickly wrote it off, and then a gentleman called Jack Casher.
Dr. Jack Casher.
Yeah, he wrote a blizzard of blinding mumbo-jumbo science. I couldn't understand what the heck he was talking about, and so I just left it.
But what Dr. Jack Casher was saying then, back in 1991, and he was from Nebraska State University, was that contrary to what NASA was stating, that these spheres, these objects, were nothing more than ice crystals or debris, he used 5 scientific principles, if you like, to try and make that theory fit.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean it the way it sounded. What I meant was that that measuring the distance and all of these type of scientific principles was really easy to shoot down, and they did it. And then nothing else came out.
But then poor old Dr. Jack Casher was shot down because he came out with a prophetic statement. He said, in my opinion, these are intelligently controlled spacecraft. Now that was almost a decade ago.
Well, you see, the problem with that is there was only one piece of video that was shown, and how can you come out and say these are intelligently controlled without looking at more?
Yeah.
I believe in the preponderance theory. It would have got O.J. Simpson jailed, you know?
Yeah.
You know, not one reasonable doubt destroys everything. So I unless some other, footage, really good footage came out, I wouldn't have made that statement.
So having assembled some footage with evidence of what you term the space phenomena 1,
Right.
i.e. spheres,
Yeah.
and having identified this anomaly, if you will, that you label space phenomena
Yeah.
2, you then set out to try and seek out informed opinion. And I think you approached, was it Professor Weinberg?
Well, actually, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
The reason I alluded to the consequences of television programs is I don't do things and then just bury them. So when I had all this material, I made a show, but I didn't say what they were. So I called MUFON in and I said, would you like, I'm supposed to be your director, would you like to, the Canadian director, would you like to come in, head man, and comment on these things? So they came in and looked at them. He came with 2 other people, and he told me, he ordered me not to air it. Well,
This is MUFON telling...
absolutely.
Did they give a reason?
You'll ruin everything, all kinds of crazy statements, right in front of my staff. So I just pulled out a pen and resigned, and calling it a conflict of interest, and I booted them out of the station. And then I contacted and then I contacted somebody who was interested in phenomena, and the 2 of us sat there and oohed and awed. In other words, we went, wow, do you know what that is? No. We were just trying to get it out, and I thought that would be the end of it, And so we put it out, and it right across Canada, and it kept playing. People were loving it and enjoying it because it was a non-threatening. Nobody was claiming anything, and you could sit there and for the second space phenomena, number 2, I just picked a copyright-cleared, beautiful symphony, and just let people sit back and look at them. Well, this thing was every time it played anywhere in the country, our phone would go off the hook. Can we get copies of this and that and the next thing? So I put it out, and I got a call from a gentleman who was contracted by NASA to find out what was depressing the astronauts. Because, believe it or not, they weren't all happy campers when they came down. And which, it's not good for public spin, so most people don't know that. And what he discovered is, just to give him a qualification, because he's a very famous international artist, is shapes. So what he proposed was put some circles and squares and triangles. It was too disorienting. I don't know whether that turned out to be the right answer, but he phoned me and he says, that phenomena 2, I've got to see it, and I can help you. Well, that's what you want. So I invited him down, and he says, well, I happen to know the gentleman that's also a contractor with NASA. His name is Dr. Weinberg. He's the behavioral specialist with 50,000 PhDs, and it was funny because up at the university, it's called Simon Fraser University. You can't find a parking lot space. This guy's got his own building, and he had a whole empty parking lot. You know, you could see right away that he was doing something special, and he was. Funny enough, he was doing brain scans, you know, where you're happy and it goes blue or green or yellow. And he was interpreting orca whales, and he had all these interesting little genius students. It was an amazing place anyway. He was a very good gentleman. And because the other contractor, I'm not using his name, and he's desperately ill himself, which is weird. He said, well, you know, Dr. Weinberg won't be interested in the spheres, you know, because he's an intellectual or something. He'd be interested in knowing what's in these color things in a vacuum. And so I thought, wow, that's great. We went up there, and at first, you know, it was one of those, yeah, okay, go ahead and show me. And at the end of I say an hour in, he was running the machine, stopping the thing, and at one point I was talking to my friend. His name is Bob, and I'm talking, and Dr. Weinberg actually came over and interrupted us, saying, "Look at this one! Look at this one!" You know, he was really getting enthusiastic, and I said, "Well, you know, what do you think they are? That's really what we're interested." And he genuinely sat down, and he went through the pixelization process, and then he'd do the thing, he'd tear the paper and throw it away. And at the end of the process, he eliminated gamma rays, he eliminated everything. And he looked at me and said, "We've got to go direct to NASA." And he gave me his card. And
which I see.
Yeah, and he said, "I'll call you, you know, when I'll set it up." And never got a call. So then my friend Bob said, "Well, I know the person right at the heart. I know the heart's here, but I don't want to punch the mic across. Let's go right to the heart of the Canadian Space Agency." So because he'd worked for them, and this person that we contacted had daily direct contact with the entire astronaut corps of Canada. He said, "Hey, you know, could we send this in both phenomena and ask your guys what they think?" And then we sent the tape to them, and that's an honest quote. We called her back. Oh, it's out. And she said, "It's the most popular tape. The astronauts just love it, you know, that type of among the astronauts." And I was pretty pleased because it was soft and non-threatening. You know, we didn't use the word UFO, I guess. And so we started this dialogue, and we would call her with questions like, what is it, stay vector, state vector, all those things, you know. Is this irrelevant? And that relationship continued. And then a very strange thing happened. The Canadian Space Association, CSA we call it, pulled the astronaut off a flight that was about to go into space. The Canadian astronaut about to go into space was suddenly pulled off the flight and replaced. And this astronaut literally, it was literally, "We don't have to tell you why, the end, goodbye," you know, so that was it. The papers dismissed it, and he disappeared. And another astronaut went up. So I said, you know, "Bob, we should really phone, because I've got a strange feeling." And so we made the call. You know, the call would be, was it the astronaut that loved them the most? One of the astronauts became obsessed with the tape. Like she was saying, "Oh, he's handing it out to just about everybody." And And she, said yes. Yes. That gentleman is the one that was pulled from the flight. Then she went cold and said, but, there's all kinds of reasons, and didn't want to talk to us anymore. And Bob, this is his friend and all that, and so I just said, let's back off, from
Now, you can't, you're not prepared to name this astronaut right now, but what you are basically saying is, you can check it out yourself.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is, you see, my friend is, this sounds strange, but he phoned me, I guess it was 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, and he told me he was told he had terminal liver cancer and was going to, it was progressing massively, and he could hardly talk. And I said, what do you think? Can I name these people? And so out of respect, really, I can't. It's a friendship.
Sure.
And also you can. The fact is that all you have to do is figure out, go to the internet, CSA, or in other words, empower. My whole message is empowerment, of the individual. You can just go on the internet and start finding out which astronaut didn't go up. I found the group of astronauts in a CSA publication, and this is him, and I'm not going to show it anymore. But I'm just saying that UFO magazine, I promised Graham, that I will, these names will come out in UFO magazine when Bob passes on. And he will, but he does, so they will come out in a statement from him, not from me.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was real. That's when I started getting, hey, what are we into? What?
Yeah.
Because everything had sort of been smooth over.
What happened after you touched base with Professor Weinberg?
He never called back. That's all that happened. Like, in other words, we just proceeded. Oh, I know. Exactly, I'm sorry. One of the things Dr. Weinberg told me is, he said, this is great stuff, but you've really got to be able to duplicate it. Find it on more flights. And he said, he was referring to phenomena too. And he said, you've got to get more than one in a shot. You've got to find not just blue, but try to get a blue and a green and a red one together, multiple colors. And he gave me this whole set of instructions, and I sort of left and thought, well, I'll follow that. But of course, I didn't know how many times you had to do it to prove it. And next flight goes up, push the machines in, and there they were. And so that to me, I thought, well, maybe I should do it again. And so I did it for 5 years. And every flight something weird would happen. I mean, an astronaut would start saying, there's an object right in front of you, and the guy would step on his line. It's in the smoking gun tape. There's an object right in front of you, Mark. Will you look out there? I don't know what you're talking about. And then another fellow says, am I missing something? And you'd hear them say, oh, a lens filter flew away or something. Which is ridiculous, because during space flights, they get worried if a little screw or something goes flying away. They actually try to get it. And the other thing is, if the lens filter had come off, besides the fact that these are sealed cameras in the back and all that, he would have reported it. Like said, we've Houston, we've lost camera 6 or something. Mm. And then just to prove it even more, it was pretty much all the time there was a camera focused on them. So I went back and watched the whole spacewalk for some lens filter or something, that was explainable. And even more interesting, as anybody that's seen the smoking gun will, they drew my attention to it. At first, I didn't see it. It was behind them. So a guy says, there's an object right in front of you, Mark. So where is there? And then this object comes up. And when he said it's a filter, then I knew that what we're talking about is a very small object, close. And just think about it. I mean, if you're, Graham, would I say to you, there's an object right in front of you, you'd say, hey, that's a microphone. What are you, dumb or something, you know? No, I wouldn't say, I don't know what you're talking about. And you know, so, and then another flight, you know, I kept saying this is the last one. And then they said, oh, on the next flight we're going to put a CCD camera on the on the low light and replace the smeary tube cameras that, believe it or not, the shuttle up, you know, for most of that era was still using tubes. So when the camera panned, you'll see streaks on the video and things. So I thought, you know, if you got this phenomena too, and it's a CCD camera, which is a charge coupling device. It's a faster camera, and so I said they should be in black and white. And guess what? Black and white. And you'll see this on the video. And then after a while, you know, I decided that's enough. You know, 2,000 million hours. I mean, my wife and I are still together. And after all of this, I was there's a great American who died as well, on the way to pick up milk, and his name is John Holloman of CNN. And he was great because he would force CNN to go live when the Mir was docking, and this was STS, I think it was 82, and it basically, I said, well, because I'm always my own worst skeptic, well, and this is a spooky thing, I said, well, it should be there. You know, CNN, this picture on my own TV. So I recorded it. No, I did the you know, this is all the marbles were put in. I'm betting the whole load on this. And you see it in the smoking gun tape, I think. It's on CNN. And they didn't even see it. So I figured that's about enough. That ought to do it. You know, we can go to CNN and all this type of stuff. And so that's that.
Yeah. Tell me, also at that time, somebody else you approached with examples, if you like, of the first phenomena, the spheres, and then latterly the second phenomena, came about at the planetarium, I believe. Tell me about that.
Well, again, Bob, he's a really funny guy, and he went to the planetarium.
This is in Vancouver?
In Vancouver. It was right after the Hubble mission, and this gentleman was touring, you know, blabbing about how great and showing the stargazers, you know, clubs, slideshows and stuff of the Hubble. And so my friend Bob went, and it's a great, he went there and he said, you know, I'm here to, I think that I was invited, and he's kind of bumbly and Columbo-like, you know, and the guy at the door said, well, you know, I don't know anything about it, and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden there's a crisis. So he said, can you do this ticket thing for a minute? So he handed Bob over the thing, and Bob's letting all of these guys in, and so they figure he's with the planetarium, and the guy never came back, so Bob closed the doors, and then he walked to the front, and they had the roped off area just for the director and this gentleman, and Bob went and sat beside them, you know, and he was loaded up with the photos and everything, and the guy went through the lecture, and Bob said, oh, it's just great, you know, and I said, but what about the, and he said, well, you know, I afterwards, everyone's chatting, you know how it goes, and he showed them this gentleman pictures of the spheres and things like that we had, and he sort of, well, you know, that's okay, you know, he was just playing it.
He was comfortable with that.
Comfortable because he could say, you know, look at all those ice crystals, you know. And then Bob pulled out phenomena 2. He stood up and stormed out of the, boom, it just disappeared.
This is a NASA official helped with the...
This is actually even more than the NASA official. It's one of the key men that put together Hubble. I mean, you know, I guess he screwed the Hubble up the first time. Anyway, so and so, you know, that really shook Bob. And so what Bob did is he suggested that we should phone this guy, you know, at the JPL.
Yeah.
So we did, and they hung up on us. And then we waited a day, and we phoned again, and we heard whispers like, "It's that guy, it's those guys," and then bang, went down again. So this thing started to really, you know, get weird. And so I thought, you know, because I actually think this second phenomenon is pretty weird. And it was almost as if, you know, they sort of come up with the cover story for spheres, you know, endless ice crystals, no matter, you know, ice crystals. Dust bunnies, meaning, no matter what James Oberg says, the word dust bunnies came from a 1968 Life magazine where they were still trying to explain John Glenn's fireflies. And they changed their story and they said it's dust that comes off of the edge of when two things, you know, and they had some pictures of what they thought it was. And it's really weird because now John Glenn says it's astronaut, he actually says it's pee-pee. It's astronaut pee-pee. Well, John Glenn didn't have a pee-pee, you know, when the fireflies were. He just did 3 orbits, you know, and you can go into National Geographic and they have the entire transcript of the conversations. Never once did he say, "I've got to go to the bathroom," you know. And then I was surprised because they were learning for the first time about air glow, which is 60 miles of a glow, and John Glenn didn't know about that. And so by the second flight, you know, most of the mysteries were solved, but they still didn't know about the fireflies. Third flight.
You also struck up, just to
yeah. So anyway,
to keep this moving along, before we turn to footage and the like, you also struck up email correspondence from with somebody from within NASA. How did that come about?
Well, there's a second person entered in the research area, and they said this person was a web freak, and said, well, you know, I'm going to strike up email conversations, and I said, well, you know, go ahead, that's fine. You know, in other words, you know, I can't do everything. I'm watching 2 million hours of this stuff, and so he struck up a conversation with various people, but with Dr.
Dr. Joe Newth.
Yeah.
The third.
Yeah, the third. Dr. Joe Newth. Now, Dr. Joe Newth, it's interesting because right away Dr. Newth, he saw the tape, and I've got all the emails that show him conversing away, saying, you know, that these could be Lou Frank small comments, but I think Lou Frank's full of it, you know, when it comes to what he thinks they are. I mean, in other words, he meant maybe photograph the same thing, but they're not, you know, whatever Lou says they are, they're not. But what was weird is when the Smoking Gun came out, all of a sudden, he'd never seen the tape, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Not only had he'd never said he'd never seen the tape, although he's acknowledged things in email correspondence about the tape. He said his VCR had been broken for 18 months and so on. But what was also disturbing was the fact that when James Oberg, who shall we say was sceptical at the outset,
yes,
contacted Professor Weinberg, who you discussed with, Professor Weinberg said, I've never spoken with you, met you, or don't know what you're talking about.
He even said he'd sue us.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. This is a gentleman, a great man. Why would he do that, you know? Mm. And then I think somebody contacted him and reminded him, and all of a sudden it went bingo, and he told me a lot. He told me his personal philosophy, which shook Bob, about what he really thought was going on in space. And he'd done it, I guess, a bad thing, you know, in the eyes of somebody. But then another email came in saying, oops, well, you know, I don't remember the conversation the way he's talking. He's, you know, and that kind of thing.
Did he ever tell you what you spoke about for 3 hours?
Did he ever tell?
Did he ever explain to Oberg what you'd actually discussed for hours?
No, he can't.
No.
Because, you know,
if it wasn't...
What happens when you this is a man that he doesn't get rattled, and he got rattled when he saw the second phenomena, especially when he couldn't figure it out. But he also got excited. You know, you get excited.
Yeah.
And so he started blabbing away. But he was sincere, and I didn't think there's anything of it, because it's just like me talking to you, and you're not saying this is secret or anything. He's just saying, well, here's, you know, I got to tell you, I blah blah blah, you know. And so I think what happened is, as soon as he remembered, he thought, you know, if I sue them, or first of all, I'll lose, and secondly, this guy will reveal everything I've said, which I haven't, you know. I'm generalizing here.
Sure.
But because I believe that, you know, some of the things he said were just his personal opinion, I respected that, and I didn't go any further with that.
Now, I'll move on again another stage, and if we need to go back, we will.
Yeah.
But after 11th of March,
Yeah.
Secret NASA transmissions, the videotape is out, people are hearing about all of this, and we get a call asking for a tape to be sent to a certain journalist in Florida by the name of Billy Cox.
Yes.
We're happy to do that, but we say, please speak with Martyn Stubbs. What happened?
Whoa, this is great. Billy Cox is, you know, this is Florida Today. It's part of the Gannett newspaper chain, the biggest going in the USA. And they print another paper called USA Today, and it is their national newspaper. And he said, I've got this tape, and tell me the story and all that kind of stuff. And I said, and he said, well, what about this tether thing, you know? And I said, well, that's probably the one to focus on, you know. And then he sprung out and he said, well, we've got a bunch of photo experts right now, right when I was on the phone, right in the back here, and they're all checking this thing out. And here's the deal, Martyn, that this article will never appear where he quotes that there's an object and all this kind of stuff. If our publisher and editor and that, if these photo experts think it's in front, it won't appear. And I said, you should print it, you know, I mean, you should tell whatever you want. But he said, no, they won't, it's a Watergate thing, you know, give me more evidence. But he said to me, if it appears, then you will know that in our drawer we have expert authorities' word, so that if anybody comes to us from our own Cape, we'll challenge them with it. In other words, the story didn't include the fact that they believed conclusively that this is going behind. Myself, I lost the internet at that point, and I didn't know it was out. And a month later, I think you told me. And I was excited about the article, but I was more excited about the secret message that he was sending.
In other words,
the article,
if our photo experts
yeah,
can conclusively demonstrate
absolutely,
that objects pass behind the tether,
absolutely,
then we will print the story.
That's
you will know.
Absolutely what he said.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely why I think it was. He's a courageous man, and I think I was surprised at the story. And it's very interesting when I did read it that, you know, when Mr. Oberg was talking to his own peers in his own area, that last comment at the end, well, that we should look into this and that.
It's very interesting.
Meanwhile, he's calling them. There's a different thing on
the internet.
Yeah, but when push came to shove and all his friends and his neighbors were going to read this, he couldn't just go crazy and say this guy's nuts. Especially when Mr. Weinberg didn't even know anything about it. So you see, he started wavering there, and that was the first guy who phoned is this huge newspaper chain, and they print a story. So, you know, that was amazing. And
that was in NASA's own backyard.
That's why it was amazing. Yes, exactly. Every family reads it. It was on the internet under Billy Cox. Now, this is really interesting. I checked the other day, and they pulled it. It's no longer part of the backlog of Billy Cox's articles anymore. Wonder why that is.
which is a bit like when the only image of the STS-75 tether that was on NASA's website got pulled not long after we released the videotape. However,
yeah, so
talking of the tether, there was some nonsense aimed in your direction, and inadvertently ours as well, when we pointed out on secret NASA transmissions that one of the curious features about this incident is that when NASA re-established contact with their stranded satellite,
exactly,
they found something rather odd about it. And you have the cutting there, I understand.
Yeah, it's really odd too that this cutting did not appear more than once in any paper, because I think there's some kind of rule they have that they have to disclose it, but only once. It's kind of like when they're going to rezone your area, they put it somewhere in the paper where you can't find it, but it's in the paper. And it says satellite signals a puzzle. And basically it says the $100 million U.S.-Italian atmospheric probe inadvertently became a free flyer Sunday night when its 20.7 kilometer tethers to the shuttle Columbia snapped. Now the really interesting point here is that it says first radio signals from the satellite caused engineers some surprise. The configuration of several systems had changed from when NASA lost contact with the craft Sunday. Examples would be that the nitrogen fuel tank was empty and its steering thruster valves were opened. In addition, a gyroscope had been left on, was powered off, while two others remained on. And the quote here is by David Wolf, astronaut David Wolf of the crew, said, "There has been an event on the satellite that we do not understand yet." Now,
I think what's interesting also, and hopefully we can get, this is United Press International, Cape Canaveral, Florida. There's the paper, and that's the photograph that was released. And if we can home in on the photograph, look what's around the tether.
Yeah. Now, I think if you probably got it on the internet, you say, "Oh, those are stars." But if once you see the full footage, you go back and look at this and say, "Of course, those aren't stars." It's very strange.
Yeah.
But I think they had to post something.
But that was another one that came and went.
Yeah, but it's very, very strange that what the gist of the meaning of the article is if this satellite had defaulted, all the gyros should have gone, not just selective ones. It's as if somebody switched this and just reprogrammed. And actually, that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
They reprogrammed the computer, or whatever it is, in a $100 million satellite. And you have the tether breaking just at the right point. And then, now who would be tinkering with a satellite that's flying out in space? It's very strange. So
now, Martyn, in order to, as I say, to keep this thing flowing,
yeah,
you wanted to raise a few areas which you think are relevant to all of this. The hidden meanings, things that we should be wary of in terms of reporting, in terms of how things are developing here now, because it's reached the stage now where we really do need to, if you like, put some meat to this framework that has been progressing now for the past 12 months, because you look at things somewhat differently to the rest, don't you? Because you are gathering up these grains of salt.
Yes.
And you're noticing more and more things that you wouldn't put down to pure coincidence.
No, that's exactly correct. But the aspect that really started getting interesting was the lingo. People have said to me, including Billy Cox, it's secret. Why did you call it secret? And I said, well, you've got it all wrong. We would have called it hidden if we meant hidden. It's secret in the sense of there's double meanings all throughout this dialogue. There's two parts to this. There's watching all the video and then having to listen to all the audio. And that there's one sentence bothered me. I don't know what you're talking about. And it seemed to me that it came out so fast before he'd even said it, that it was some kind of a double meaning. And I found in the Apollo missions, they saw flashes in the craters. So this one astronaut worked with somebody, blah, 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 and he says here, but when he got to the point where he had seen the lights in the crater, those frames appeared to be missing. So he turned to his friend. Johnson asked Page about the missing footage, and Page told him, I don't know what you're talking about. No, come on. So what I'm sort of saying is Apollo to this, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't know what you're... So I began to suspect things like that. And on the tape, there's also, there's a lot of things will fly by in terms of audio, but besides there's an object right in front of you, there's also a dialogue you'll hear over the Houston shot. I tried to condense it. We were editing at 5 in the morning, and it was really hard to do this because I wanted to make it, to tell a story for you. And so they're fixing the Hubble, and I guess they've been in space too long. And these are the brightest and the best, seriously the brightest and best, because that was the mission that would make or break NASA, you know. Either they can't fix the Hubble or they can. The one astronaut says, hey, you see that? You see that satellite down there? You see that satellite? And the guy says, what satellite? That's not a satellite, that's Venus. He said, Venus? He says, no, it's coming right at us. You'll hear this. And he says, no, that's what Venus looks like. And then he says, it moves that fast? And he goes, yeah, it does, yeah. And then that's it, you know. So it's not just there's an object right in front of you that's interesting. It's all kinds of audio. And so that's how complex this is. And I didn't do all of this work and not do my job. I had to do all this work after I'd done my job because I also had all these stations and all these programs and everything else. But who could turn their back on this? I mean, by now, I was really interested in what was really going on. Not just what these things were, but all this strange behavior. I'm not a ufologist in the sense that I'm not used to this. And all of this is happening. And everybody's going weird. And so I just, as a journalist, it just piqued my curiosity more. And now, and so there's even that aspect. I'd love to just send you to print all of these quotes. There's tons of them that don't make any sense. If you've been in space, the people on Hubble had been in space a ton of times before. They don't send up rookies to fix the Hubble. This guy had seen satellites before, all that kind of stuff. So there's something weird about, you know.
Now,
in other words, I'm using gentle language.
The material that you're wanting to share with the audience today, Martyn.
Yeah.
How have you managed to? What was it that was uppermost in your mind to demonstrate to the audience today, to share with them?
Well,
how did you go about that when you were editing till 5 in the morning?
Yeah, well, I wanted to give a sort of an overview. I wanted to show you the preponderance concept rather than what the smoking gun did. Is it sort of zeroed in on really great cases like the astronauts couldn't open the door, and somebody suggested in an article somewhere that they'd seen something, and then they got poo-pooed. So I looked at the video and there were these things, and so I wanted to get a little bit of everything in it. So that's pretty much what's there. And what I'm going to do is show the first video, and the first video is Phenomena 1. And then when the first video ends, and I'm going to keep my mic on, and I'll try to clarify things, because at 5 in the morning I didn't even get a chance to review. I'm just hoping I'm a great editor and it works, or that Russell's got it queued upright.
I'm sure Russell has.
Well, absolutely. That's why you can take this joke. So, but then I'd like to explain the second space phenomena, and it's a little shorter piece, and what I've done is I've just put a whole stack of these single frames together for you, black and white, color, and then I picked some music, and just thought, just sit back and take a look at them, because I don't know how else you can illustrate that.
Okay. Before we run the video, if one of my colleagues could kindly get me the laser pointer from the lectern, or, yeah, I think, could one of you folks up there just get the little green laser pointer? Just on the top, if it's there.
Is there any control?
Yeah.
That's it.
Aren't those illegal?
Nah, well, you can't buy them in the shops over here right now.
Yeah.
But for God's sake, don't point it in that direction.
Promise.
And you just do that. So we're ready to rock and roll with the video. Maybe if we can get a couple of the lights down. I don't know whether we can or not, but...
Yeah, Russell, it'd be great to get the lights down. Now, here is... there's... I can't hardly see this, but if you can see?
Could we get the lights down at all?
Here in the control room, they're watching this thing. These people here. And they're just... Have you got any audio, Russell? And
of Europe, and just about to move from sunlight into sunset, thus the blooming effect of
this is the object
camera
right in
lens.
front of you. Can you turn it up?
Looks like you got an object right in front of you, Mark. Can you look out there? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Never mind.
Never mind. Don't know what you're talking about. Well,
Are we missing something?
am I missing something?
I don't see anything.
I don't see it.
Yeah, we think the camera filter came off the mark. It's about your 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock going away. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Discovery, we're sending you an order to state vector.
Now, if it's state vector, how come they don't say some... Why do they say...
Copy. Yeah, we think
There's
the
the camera.
camera filter came off the mark.
Yeah, the camera filters come off of these things, do they?
Yeah, we think the camera filter
You know what I
came
mean?
off the mark.
This is in the vacuum of space. Now, this is over Houston.
Good one.
And listen to the dialogue.
There's a planet down on the horizon too, isn't there? Is there a satellite coming in? Look at that satellite down there, George. Which direction? Right toward the sunset. See that bright light down there? I think that's, isn't that Venus?
Venus!
That's Venus, I think that, yeah. Oh, the Earth makes it move that fast.
Oh, the Earth does make it move that fast.
How fast it moves. Going away. Don't worry
Look at
about it.
this one. And it's still moving, see?
Don't worry about it.
Here's a door or something flying
that I'm looking
by.
at shaking. On your video, when the jets are firing, do you see the camera moving at all, oscillating?
Oscillating. Why would you ask why a camera's oscillating? I think something else is oscillating. So, here it is again.
It might just be the monitor that I'm looking at shaking. On your video, when the jets are firing, do you see the camera moving at all, oscillating?
Isn't that strange? I would say, my God, there's something really close. It could hit us. But apparently that's nothing to worry about. And this is the back of the shuttle here, the bum. Now watch this. Russian talk. I don't know what they're saying.
Да, Валера, я тебя наблюдаю.
Now I slow it down. There. See? Look at it. Now it goes
Ну, корабль
over wing.
хорошо подсвечивает. Все нормально.
This is Mission Control Houston. This picture of the Russian space station Mir is being provided to us by the low light level cameras on board Discovery. Physician Valery Polyakov, one of the Mir crew members, is occasionally shining a flashlight at the crew members
That must be a
to
flashlight.
help with the...
This is listen to the dialogue if you can turn it up, Russ.
Repress the right ohm so the B regs, please.
There it goes.
Roger.
Close it again. Here, I've slowed it down. You'll see it.
Discovery, a magnificent picture, mirror crossing the horizon.
There it is, right there. Magnificent picture, eh? I mean, wouldn't you mention that? Like, except for the piece of debris about the...
Well, we should have it on IMAX also, and
See, we've got it on IMAX.
we certainly have it in all of our eyes.
We certainly have it in all our eyes.
Yes, sir.
You got it. There it is in real time. This is
Discovery, we have KU band downlink.
This is looking down from the Discovery, from Mir to...
We are now receiving pictures from both Discovery and from Mir.
Now the Russians pan over, the Russians, and they see this thing. Now look at this. They zoom in on it, but they go too far. It's close, so they pull back, and there it is, in focus. The blue coming off of it.
Houston, when
And then he
can you get
zooms
cameras?
back,
Just about
and
now.
so here I'm running it in slow-mo. It's got a blue haze.
Good. It's unbelievable.
It was interesting, just the very fact that they panned over and zoomed in on it. And so I wanted to give you a good look at this. And now here's another one. This is really interesting. This is looking through the cabin down at the shuttle.
That means we
Can you
only
turn it
have
up a bit,
about
Russ?
30 or so feet to go before we reach our point of closest
Now
approach.
watch this thing. He's trying to focus.
This particular picture is from Mir.
Watch this. And I'm going to run it again.
And all rendezvous
Here
activities
it goes in
continue to go
slow-mo.
very
I think we'll catch it
smoothly.
in a sec.
All orbiter systems are functioning as expected.
There, you see it moving? Now
Discovery and Mir are now just south of the Kamchatka Peninsula and just to the east of Japan. The two vehicles are about to start a southeasterly sweep above the Pacific Ocean
just very
on
matter-of-factly.
Mir's 57th orbit of the mission on Discovery's 57th orbit of the mission and on Mir's 15th orbit of the day.
And there's the real time. Again. And these I see a lot of you. I've got a lot of these. These are just, now this is very interesting.
This is Mission Control, Houston. We are using
you
the
turn the
payload
sound
bay
up on this,
cameras
Russ?
right now to hopefully catch a glimpse of the Russian space station Mir as it performs an on-orbit burn.
These are supposed to be stars.
Though it will be difficult to pick Mir out from the stars as they pass behind us, the payload bay cameras are positioned such that they're
see, they
looking
were-
straight back behind the orbiter, where the Mir is flying at about 850 nautical miles behind us.
Now they pan down and just look at
No
this.
joy from here. Sorry. Hope it was a good one, though, for our friends.
Turn it up now, Russ.
Thank you, sir. We could not see it here either. We'll wait 2 or 3 more minutes till sunrise, and then at that time give you a go for KU Stowe.
They're everywhere. They zoom back.
We're at a mission lapse time of 7 days, 13 hours, and 17 minutes. This is Mission Control,
See that?
Houston.
Now, I never knew stars did this, but I guess they do.
The Mir space station is now visible on the far left-hand side of the screen, about an inch from the bottom of this particular picture.
Where? Question mark.
Okay, the Mir space station is the small flashing light
This one?
in the center, about an inch from
Camera Charlie on a monitor.
the left-hand side of the screen. It's
Whoop.
slowly,
It came out of nowhere,
The
that
hell
one.
on the camera.
it is slowly moving closer to the left-hand side and is has a very light flashing to it.
We think on the middle of the screen, way to the left-hand side.
No, I'm confused at this point.
We think you can see a flashing light just a little bit to the left of the center of the screen, very faint.
They don't know what
And
to
we
do
do see
now.
something flashing visually, but we're not sure that might be...
This is Mission Control,
they're turning
Houston.
down.
Once again, we believe we were just able to spot the Mir spacecraft as it flies about 850 nautical miles behind Discovery.
Now they're shutting the lens down. There's something strobing
The
there.
spacecraft appeared as a very small flashing light and then moved
Turn it up, right?
out of the picture as the camera was being moved to try to get a different picture.
This is from STS-80. And
This is
again,
Mission Control, Houston. Once again, we believe we were just able to spot the Mir spacecraft as it flies about 850 nautical miles behind Discovery.
these things
The
flying by.
spacecraft appeared as a very small flashing light and then moved out of the picture as the camera was being moved to try to get a different picture. The one thing that we have noticed in the flight control room is that we've seen a large number of shooting stars during this 5-minute or so period when we've been watching.
Checkpoint initiates and work.
Thank you.
During this 5 or so minute period when we've been watching for Mir. And
We've seen a lot of meteors.
the streaks that are shooting across the screen are meteorites. In other words, shooting stars.
Shoot. Exactly. These things are outside of the 60
We think you
mile-
can see a flashing light just a little bit to the left of the center of the screen,
So,
very faint.
See something flashing
You know,
visually,
so
but we're not
so
sure
it's,
if that's what.
This is particularly interesting.
Mir space station just successfully completed an on-orbit burn, and we were trying to get a look at the space station while it performed that burn. What we believe was the Mir was a small flashing light that was towards the left-hand side of the screen. But one of the remarkable things about the time that we were looking with the payload bay cameras in that area was that we saw a number of meteorites and shooting stars,
There's
probably
one.
about a dozen or so.
Now, these meteorites...
The crew on board Discovery has less than an hour remaining before it begins its
Again,
sleep
here's a
period.
shot of those
The crew
two
will be
twin
going
ones.
to bed at about 1:52 p.m. Central.
Houston attentif, pattern setup is complete.
No, here's another one that appears.
And we copy, Jean-François.
And all thus far during the checkout of the Orbiter Atlantis' flight control systems has gone very smoothly.
Going
The
smoothly.
flight controllers have not
Except for
monitored
the debris.
any issues whatsoever with the checkout this morning.
And you see, even as I turn the iris on, this thing's still there and still pulsing. Here's another one.
Atlantis is
Did
passing
you
about
catch that one?
163 nautical miles above Saudi Arabia on a southern course.
I just repeat it again there. There's tons of
That
these on
will
every
take it out
tape.
above the Gulf of Aden.
Columbia, Houston, we're looking at
This is
our
from Smoking
payload
Guy.
bay camera, and it looks like a lot of moonlight glinting off the ocean, a
Can you turn
whole
it up there?
sparkling bed of diamonds out there. Is that a real picture, or are we just getting some video fuzz?
Boy, it's taken them a long time to figure out the answer. Pause, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And there's a flasher there, and they're way up there. And he still
Hey,
has...
Houston, we're recording that. That's some of the ice crystals that we were dumping
Ice
out earlier.
crystals,
And, yeah, it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's a great combination of the moonlight and the ice and the clouds.
Every time they have a different thing. Sometimes it's ice crystals, sometimes it's debris that just kind of follows us around. There's no consistent answer every time they spot these
Yeah,
things.
it's a
Look at
combination of
and on across the Atlantic Ocean over Africa.
and of course that's the camcorder red light flashing.
Now this, look at this, right in
Yeah,
here.
we see the thruster
This is
firing.
the
Thanks
camcorder.
very much.
Now, there, see, it came right out from there, and I think I show it again. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Part I was talking about a story that got,
See,
of course, the whole thing
slow
got me
motioning
psyched,
it.
but that was really
You know,
neat.
it's not close.
And we were firing
It's
hours,
coming
and we were both
like
maneuvering close. It was pretty neat.
Spaceflight itself
Now watch
broadens
this.
your horizons to the
Watch
point
what
which you
comes
kind
into
of
shot.
open up to
Look.
possibilities.
This is
On
this,
2 of my
this
missions,
is
and I still don't have
unbelievable.
an answer.
I just couldn't believe this when I saw
it. A snake
And look at some
out
are
there,
shooting
6, 7,
across,
8
some are
feet
going,
long.
some are closer because
It
they're
is
glowing.
rubbery because it has
And
internal
look,
waves
you know,
in it, and
I
it
mean, there's
follows
so many
you
I
for a
couldn't
rather
use
long
10
period
pointers
of
to point them
time.
out.
The more you fly in space,
This-
the more you
these
see
are not
an
stars.
incredible amount of things out there, and that sort
there,
of
look at
brings
these.
to you
One- whoop.
really a certainty.
Now, doesn't that look like
that other living creatures are out there. Some incredibly primitive, more primitive,
And,
some just
so if you
proteins
look
coming
again,
together,
you'll start
amino
to see,
acids,
you'll
and
start to
some just
recognize them
single-cell
now.
organisms, and other
Concept.
civilizations have been around for a million years that are doing unimaginable
There, and
kinds of
say,
things.
look at these things. Now, apparently they're not too
That's what
worried
they
in the
know
mirror,
about.
even though our Canadian astronauts
It's
are in
about
there,
the
the Japanese
surface
astronauts are in there, the Russian astronauts
I
are
can
in there.
see no
Look at
way
these things.
that would be classified in any way.
And,
That would not be. I'm an astronaut. I fly in space.
And
I have 5 flights. The second I see some, I'm going to tell somebody.
that one almost looks like it's sort of,
And this is
Oh,
a fact
you know.
of the matter. We were really not sure
sort of like
after John
a
flew
caterpillar or
whether or not there were critters, living
Look at that.
critters out there somewhere.
I have the fireflies.
Sometimes. The stuff of life is
Now,
absolutely everywhere.
there's another one. But you see, they're different, but they all have something in common. They should be commented on or something. Here's another weird one,
All loaded
right
with
in here.
complex organic molecules, the
Oh.
very sorts that you would
Just-
want to have for the
Well,
origin
really,
of life.
what's that?
We see forming planetary systems everywhere.
There's one over here.
We know that the evolutionary process is nothing unique to the Earth.
Look at this one.
You see another light going by on the ground there.
He said, you see another light on the ground there.
It could have been a star, Bill.
And then he says it could have been a star. Oh. This is our famous tether. As I know, some of you haven't seen this before. So,
You guys getting the image?
Franklin, we see a long line, a couple of star-like things, and a lot of things swimming in the foreground. Can you describe what you're seeing?
Well, the long line is a tether, and is getting washed out quickly, but Claude is trying to do a quick, good job here adjusting the cameras.
no comment at all.
Copy that.
Again, that description by the crew, this is the tether in the satellite with approximately 12 miles of tether still attached to it. Columbia and the satellite now just passing over the west coast of northern Africa. The two spacecraft now 90 nautical miles apart.
That's a long way.
Columbia, Houston, that's a much better view, a lot more contrast visible.
They like that one.
And how wide does that tether appear to be? It seems to resemble a much wider strand than we'd expect. Can you describe which way the satellite is visible on that strand?
Satellite now
Ladies and gentlemen, this is
100 nautical miles.
Don't forget.
Now, completely unzoomed, and you see the full extent of the tether. I tried to adjust the focus, but I can't get better than that.
Okay, Claude. Thank you.
I'm going to zoom
I
in
mean,
now.
wouldn't you say something about all those rather than I've done the best I can at focusing? And so these are, I have a lot of tether shots, and here's just another one. This is a different, this is I pulled this down, I don't know what it is, but I noticed this. As the stars move, something's there.
And
The window shot.
we'd like to confirm you got 2 copies of that.
And the second one's spinning right now. Thank
They're
you.
everywhere. That's really good. And this is the Earth the stars are over, or the ice crystals. And this is the tether when it broke. This is what they
Again,
say.
this is a view of the satellite.
Well, if it had to break, it did it in the right place.
And the $100 million satellite
So
That's that.
We got the downlink and we're looking.
They're always looking, are they?
At least 8,600 objects larger than a grapefruit floating around
so
in space.
here's just
more than 90% of them are non-working pieces
examples.
of space junk.
I mean, this is really, you should just see this.
Keep track of them when objects deorbit and burn and when they get close to manned space missions. Mid-September, the cosmonauts and astronaut Michael Foale sealed themselves into the Mir's escape capsule when a 220-pound U.S. military satellite came as close as a half mile. Space junk regularly comes within a few miles of Mir. In 80 missions, U.S. Space Command says U.S. space shuttles have had to maneuver 7 times to avoid trackable junk.
We've seen more
Here,
than 7
of course,
examples
is a collision. To date, orbiting space junk has not hit a manned mission, but just last year, a French satellite and a chunk of Ariane rocket the size of a computer hit each other at about 31,000 miles an hour. It's estimated that there have been more than 100 collisions between satellites and orbiting junk since 1961. And each collision, of course, means even more space junk.
See, they pan
there
down.
may be more than 2 million screws, springs, and metal flecks too small to track. And there are already stories of some of that small stuff hitting shuttles. In 1983, a shuttle mission returned with a ding in the windshield, the result of a tiny speck of paint traveling at about 18,000 miles
It's contradictory
per
to
hour.
say we're really worried about all this.
This
it's
process
really
takes,
dangerous for the
about
shuttle.
2 to 3
and
minutes.
you've heard them pay no attention.
As these hooks and latches provide the permanent seal between the docking.
Now here's another
Lean us
sequence.
back with your teeter seats.
This is flared out right now, so they're going to adjust. This is the mirror. And look at
Low
these.
light level black and white
And
cameras.
here's another one of those goes behind, comes out.
Much better at observing the
You're
Earth
starting
surface
to,
and the
they're
star
starting to become your
clusters as
friends.
the
You
orbiter
get used to
passes,
them.
high
They look the
overhead.
same.
When the orbiter moves within a daylight pass, the color cameras in the payload
And
bay
this
are
thing is
used
just,
to,
it's just an example of
get,
something floating
more
out in space. Here's a circular, very strange.
interesting sights on the day
It's a
side
very
of the Earth.
interesting sight.
City lights very evident now as the orbiter again is tracking
So the
northeasterly
city lights.
with the payload bay pointed in the direction of travel.
So these city light, there's some cities that are floating around.
Working with the Hercules Inertial Measurement Unit camera, which pairs precise geolocating data with the images it records.
Look at this.
Meanwhile, Don Thomas working with some photo
Here.
TV documentation of the activities
And
on board.
sort of zooming in. I thank you. So that proves that
And
is
this
just
is Mission
a mark
Control
on there,
Houston.
but
We're
this is-
receiving live downlink television pictures from the payload bay cameras of Discovery.
When they move, it allows me to determine what is a mark
The city of Houston, where
and what is not. Anyway, there's a lot of...
Discovery's circling the Earth every 90 minutes
Need a little
at
more
an
audio?
altitude of
Russ?
193 statute
Now,
miles,
this
which
is
is
a
about
satellite.
167 nautical miles,
And this is the
thus
Canada
providing
arm.
a sunrise and sunset about every 45 minutes as the orbiter circles the Earth 16.
So they're everywhere. Like I would worry if debris was about to hit the satellite, but nothing.
125 feet.
Roger.
See, they just ignore it. This is the satellite.
Processing skills and those caused by fatigue. The performance test that Commander Hendricks are performing
frequently
Now,
noticed
this
on
is
shuttle
through a
flights
window.
and do not pose a hazard to the crew of a small size.
And this is what happens when it gets hit by a
Columbia itself is
micrometeorite.
traveling around the world at a speed of about 17,500 miles an hour.
The crew on board Columbia will perform
Yeah,
a
all right.
test of star tracker navigation. That's using star trackers,
These are satellites.
sensors on the nose of the spacecraft to judge how those sensors are affected by the...
Copy, Taco. What we'd like you to do is to perform Block 5 Bravo, Step 1,
Houston, Columbia, you may have
Here's
noticed
your satellite.
how we did the camera C tilt. We aimed it at the forward bulkhead and then just a straight 90-degree up tilt. So in this view, I believe wake shield would be the image to the right, and Orpheus Box would be the one to the left. And out our window, as we're looking out the overhead window 8, wake shield is high and Orpheus Box is low.
Look at this. Are these John Glenn's fireflies about to appear, or what? See it? It's kind of strobing.
Cancel the spacewalks, but they are engaged in a data collection effort to take a look at the gearboxes on the hatches themselves.
40-degree bias attitude.
I'm just showing the whole stack. It's probably 6 in the morning.
Roger, here comes the item 16.
Everything they show, they're constantly trying to not show. So right now at the camera, oh, here's a color shot of something coming down. And it's kind of rotating or twirling or something. But it started out there. So I left it on a little bit longer. I thought, well, you know, what's that? What are they? Now this is when it's too bright. These are lightning storms on the Earth. Look, here's one kind. Here's a different kind. Here's another kind. These are the flashes of the lightning. These look like they're going to crash. Oops. And then...
this is Mission Control, Houston.
This is the
Once again, we are looking at a videotape replay of the external tank as
the fuel tank
had separated
and there's all
plunging
kinds
back
of really
towards Earth
strange
following Columbia's climb to orbit
you
yesterday.
know, moving around it. It's very
Okay,
strange.
we've got the downlink at this time, and there's the ET.
He called it an ET. He says, there's the ET. Can you turn it up a bit, Russ? Yeah, and there's another one there. What happened? Is that it?
Okay. Could we move on to...
Oh, there's...
thunderstorm activity during the night passes, as well as
Oh no, there's a little more.
other environmentally interesting targets of opportunity during the day passes.
I think that's I fell
Typically,
asleep
when the
a couple
orbiter
times
is
when I was
on the
editing
dark
it.
side of the Earth, as it is now, at least for the next 5 to 6 minutes, the low light level black and white cameras are much better at observing
Anyway, these things go on. You can kill it,
star
Russ.
clusters as the orbiter passes high overhead.
I didn't
When the
know
orbiter-
how long we had. There's another probably million trillion hours even on this tape.
You said you've... yes. Now, I think I'm still...
Yeah. Got a boom a
Before
little.
I introduce Les Willie, you said that you put a compilation of clips together to music. I'm looking at the time. If we have to go slightly over 6 o'clock, it's all right. I can bribe a security guard. But how long did you say this tape runs for?
Well, it can run. We can run it just until we feel we've got
We're
the feel
happy
for
with
it.
Yeah.
Because what I've done is this is the second space phenomena that appears in these really 1/60th of a second. So I would grabbing them and slamming them together and put some music behind it. And if we could drop the lights and just let it go.
Let's see what you've done with Second Space Phenomenon.
Yeah, let's. I don't know what I've done with it. Now this is black and white, and you see them. Can you hear music? And if you see, when you're stripping frames, it's hard. But this is. I started off and it's in black and white, And each one of these is 1/60th of a second. So the only way to really show them is to just cut between them. A little more on the... Color. Self-luminous. And they dance. And this is from all kinds of flights. See, sometimes you get them streaking and sometimes they're round. And...
All right, now let me place in it here.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm not saying what they are, so...
No, absolutely not. But they're self-illuminating.
Yes.
So in order to be self-illuminating, let's say, for instance, if we look at meteors,
blue.
That can only happen as they're penetrating the Earth's atmosphere, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we shouldn't be seeing this, should we?
No. Absolutely. In fact, like I say, this is the only way to show you. I mean, otherwise you can't see them. They're invisible. And that's why CNN didn't see them.
And would it be fair to say that your average astronomer or your average scientist would even know what an SVHS machine would look like?
It's a VHS machine called a super VHS because it gives more lines.
How many astronomers or scientists use them?
Well, they're all over North America. Yeah. As you see, they're just, as the satellite slowly moves down. And...
So when Professor Weinberg saw this,
well,
his reaction was what?
Well, his reaction was to take the control out of my hands and start catching them. I've just tried to show you that there isn't they're everywhere. This is them bringing a satellite in, and they just dance. They go blue, red, and this is that NTSC problem where you convert all the color sort of weirdness, but I mean, they're blue, red, orange, and sometimes you get them better, and sometimes you don't. And it's hard for me. This was what, 7 a.m. Were you getting up about then?
Probably. When you were just going there.
Give me a little more music, right? Now this is they're actually jumping around really close here. But if you looked at the footage in real time, you wouldn't see them. You don't see them unless you sort of have an editor's eye.
So we're seeing all the colours of the rainbow, essentially.
Yeah, and they get more colorful actually as it goes on. I just took them at random. And if anybody, has any idea what these are, there are scientists who'd like to know. Anyway, I'm apparently being given credit for discovering gamma rays when a $100 million gamma ray observatory up there couldn't. As you see, it's very dark. This is the Earth, and this is what they call the Earth glow. And as you can see, they're not reflecting any light. There is no light. Now, here they are again. It just doesn't matter where you go, what you show me or give me, I can find them. And they're just And they jump. That's what's really interesting. Where do they go when they're... My favorite are the blue. See, I'm sure there's a satellite. I'm sure your eyes are now beginning to recognize them. It's the only way. You just got to watch them a lot, and then you'll start to see similar things. And they seem to be very interested in satellites, and when the arm is moving, when the doors are open. And
near Earth object.
So these are on top of the spheres. In other words, the spheres are there too, as well as these. And so I just tried to keep the ones with the spheres out so you could see this. But I've got them with both phenomena going on. See that as it gets darker, there's still...
You can see a meteorite almost any night. Go out into the desert. You might find a piece. They are pieces of stars, same as you and me. They have a
Look over the Earth, just anywhere. And I'm just trying to give you an illustration here of just, you know, everywhere they are. This is the Earth, and they're always there. And this is the Earth, the air globe. And they go in both. So they're close. They're close. They're close.
So in other words, when people ask you to produce me examples of this phenomena, which nobody's been able to even guesstimate what it may be.
No, in fact, the skeptics are duking it out now.
I know, but
because they don't want to give you the gamma.
Would it be fair to say you can produce hundreds or thousands?
Thousands. If you like, in other words, they're on every single thing, and I don't know if Graham's going to let us go that far, but the CNN thing is on the smoking gun as well, and you can see, if I can even pull them off of CNN.
I think if we can cut the video.
Yeah, we can kill it now, ladies and gentlemen.
So we can get the
I
lights
hope you
up.
got a good idea of these.
Okay. Now, if we can get Willie's first tape in, Willie's first tape in, I beg your pardon. Question is now, of course, where do we go with this? Because you've got plans with people in Canada.
Yes, I do.
To develop this. Do you want to share that with us, with the audience?
There's a film company wants to option it, but the problem with that is once they option it, no one else can have it. There's a program, The Lone Gunmen, which were the X-Files geeks, I guess you call them, have their own show this year in the States and Canada, a weekly show, and they've got the idea. I hired for a theater sport, you know, a kind of comedy thing, the fellow with the long blonde hair and the glasses, and they're thinking one of them would be the guy who discovers it. Use this real video, because the whole thing is actually going to be more on open files than it is, you know, Mully Scully stuff, you know. So they're interested, and in fact, there's all kinds of Fox TV, Bob Cave apologized for being really mean and stealing the video and, you know, trying to pull it off. What happened was they got 20 million viewers, and it was all just for this shuttle thing. And so he calls me up and he says, "My God, we didn't get that other one, Phenomena 2, and we love you, Martyn. We love you, don't we, guys?" You know, it was a typical Hollywood thing. And I just said, no hard feelings. And he says, the other shows now allowed us to, we've got the go from Fox, and we're going to produce this series, and the first show we're going to do this phenomena too, and when you get back from Leeds, you know, we'll call you, all that kind of stuff. And then I wanted to see if all the other producers were there, and I said hello to David or whatever, and in the background you go, hi, you know, the speakerphone, you know, the whole deal.
Yeah.
And and it goes on.
It goes on, and
I don't know who to give it to or what to do with it, or whether to put it on the TV show, or, but in North America, this has, especially the first phenomena, has the same value as the elves and sprites and things like that, and the same as Lou Frank's. That's their video. That's their cameras. It has nothing to do with me. And all I am is just some guy in a community station with a bunch of broken down VTRs and tapes that are supposed to be worn out, and a dish. And you know, anybody here can do it. And I was happy to find out that when I was exhausted and couldn't do it anymore, that Graham had come into contact with the next guest, who I've never met before until this conference, never talked to before or anything. And
we go on from there.
And he picked it up right when I left off. It's almost in the stars.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the time being, Martyn Stubbs, thank you very much.
No.